It's throwback week again. We've got a rivalry matchup on Thursday night against the Raiders. What's up, Broncos country? My name is Brandon Gilchrist. Well, we've got a short week this week as our Broncos get ready for Thursday Night Football in their second division matchup of the season against the Raiders. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about this matchup. The Raiders sit at 2-6. Our head coach Pete Carroll is in his first year coaching the Raiders. It hasn't gone as I think many expected, and this season feels like one where really they're just going to be in that role of trying to play spoiler for the rest of the division. Now, as I mentioned, Pete Carroll's entering his first year as head coach for the Raiders after spending 13 years as the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. He took a one-year hiatus, and now he's right back in coaching, looking to turn around the Raiders. So far, it's been a tough challenge. On Sunday, the Raiders come to Denver after a tough overtime loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. It felt eerily similar to the Super Bowl 49 loss the Seattle Seahawks experienced against the Patriots, where on the goal line, the Seahawks opted to throw instead of run, and the pass was intercepted. This time around against the Jaguars, they opted to throw instead of run, and the pass was knocked down. Raiders lose. The Raiders have some talent on this team. They just haven't quite put it all together. Pete opted to bring in some familiar faces from his Seattle days into the organization to help him turn the ship around. One big name was Geno Smith at quarterback. Now, the Broncos defend their home turf with a 7-2 record, tied for the best record in football right now. Excited about their second division matchup this year. This will be the first of a 2-game stretch against division opponents. I'm excited. Our Broncos are going to be sporting their throwback jerseys on Thursday Night Football in Primetime. It's awesome to see that the organization elected to wear them on Primetime. Oh, it's going to look so sweet under those lights. After 10 days of rest, they'll have a huge matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's talk about the Broncos defense versus the Raiders offense. Now, the Broncos defense is currently the third best defense in the league by yards. They average 279.9 yards a game, 186.8 yards passing a game, which is sixth best, 93.1 yards rushing, which is eighth best, and they only surrender 18.4 points a game, which is good for fourth. When we look at our front seven, it was awesome to see Dre Greenlaw back in the fold after his suspension the week before. You immediately felt his impact, especially when we talk about the goal line stand right at the beginning of the game. There's just something different when Dre Greenlaw's in the game and in the middle of our defense. When the opposing offense goes against him, he is a wall, and they just stop. In terms of coverage, we finally saw how it unfolded and how they were going to cover with Pat Surtain not being able to play. It was a mix of Jahdae Barron and Chris Abrams-Draine, each taking their share at playing the outside role. It looks like it's all personnel-based and matchup-based depending on what the opposing offense is going to do, and that determines who's going to play outside, who's going to play inside. I'm sure we'll continue to see that while Pat is healing. In terms of the Raiders offense, it's coordinated by Chip Kelly. This is his first year as a Raiders offensive coordinator. Prior to that, he was the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, and before that, he was the head coach of UCLA from 2018 to 2023. And prior to that, he was the head coach for San Francisco 49ers, and prior to that, the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Chip Kelly's offense right now is ranked 30th in the league. They average 283.3 yards a game, 194.1 passing, which is 24th in the league, 89.1 yards rushing, which is 29th in the league, and 16.5 points a game, which is also 29th in the league. Now, a Chip Kelly offense typically relies a lot on tempo and speeding up the pace of the game. They use outside zone running primarily, coupled with spread offense concepts to really help take advantage of matchups against the opposing defense. Now, this year, the Raiders have used 11 personnel, so that's one tight end and one running back, 3 receivers, 74.4% of the snaps. Very similar to how the Broncos faced Dallas. They'll need to be ready for that 11 personnel matchup, and the Raiders trying to test the fact that they don't have Pat Surtain on the field. Part of the reason for the offensive struggles for the Raiders have been because of that offensive line. they have allowed pressure across that offensive line this year. Couple that with the fact that they have not been great at creating lanes for their running backs, and you've got a team that's absolutely going to struggle when you can't get it done in the trenches. When we look at their running game, they drafted a first-round rookie with a ton of potential that a lot of teams coveted in Ashton Jeanty. Right now, he's third in the league when it comes to creating missed tackles, so he is a force when defenses go up against him. The challenge with that is he's getting met in the backfield and having to create all of those missed tackles before he can even try to create positive runs. It's absolutely clear that he finds the most success when he runs on the outside. That makes sense when you have a line that's allowing so much right up the middle. He's got to create some space, and going around on the outside is absolutely the way to do that. In terms of the passing game, as I mentioned before, Geno Smith joins Pete Carroll in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, the year hasn't gone as he's expected. Geno's had a lot of success here over the last few years in Seattle. This year, he's thrown 11 touchdowns, but coupled that with 11 interceptions as well, tied for the most in the league. He's also not finding much success down the field, 10 plus air yards. Most of his success is coming from short throws, throwing behind the line of scrimmage. By far, Geno's favorite targets have been his tight ends, and that makes sense when you're in trouble, facing a lot of pressure. That tight end can be a absolute safety blanket for a quarterback. With that, Brock Bowers has been a force for him. Coming back from injury last week was a gift for Geno. Brock Bowers was responsible for 3 touchdowns and is absolutely going to be a challenge for the Broncos. Before that, Michael Mayer, tight end as well, while Brock Bowers was out, continued to be Geno's favorite target. Having both of them on the field, I think that provides an interesting challenge for the Broncos defense to face. When we look at the wide receivers, well, this is going to be an interesting situation. The trade deadline happened on Tuesday before this matchup, and the Raiders' number 1 receiver, Jacoby Myers, was traded away. Now the Broncos will be facing a wide receiver room that doesn't really have a clear number 2. Whether it's Trey Tucker or Tyler Lockett, one of them or both of them will probably be looked to fill that void. So what's the plan for all 11 on defense with the Broncos? Number 1, absolutely crash the backfield. No matter where it is on the defensive line for the Broncos, I think they have an opportunity to get home here. Because Ashton Jeanty has the ability to make people miss, the Broncos will absolutely need to rally to tackle, very similar to how they played Cam Scatterboo. Number 2, take the risk on creating turnovers. This should be a game, whether that's forced fumbles, whether that's interceptions, that our Broncos have more than 1 turnover. Because there really hasn't been much chemistry for this offense, I think the Broncos can take some chances in trying to jump some routes. If we can get home with 4 and play coverage, we'll be in prime position to take advantage of those opportunities when Geno is throwing the ball. Let's take a look at the Broncos offense versus the Raiders defense. After facing the number 1 defense in the league, the Broncos offense dropped out of the top 10. So sad. They currently sit at 13th in the league with 347.3 yards a game, 213.8 passing, which is good for 17th, 133.6 yards rushing, which is good for 7th, and 25 points per game, which is good for 14th. The O-line continues to shine and give Bo the time he needs to throw. Garrett Bowles allowed just 2 pressures last week and 0 sacks against one of the best defensive lines. It was great to see that our offensive line didn't allow Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson Jr. to wreck the game. In terms of the running game, J.K. Dobbins continues to shine. I think we're all praying for him to carry the ball more. He still seems to average around 14 to 16 yards a carry. Last week was only 61 yards for him, but he's averaging 5.1 yards a carry and is currently 5th in the league in rushing. R.J. Harvey also adds a dynamic component when it comes to being a running back. His ability to catch the ball, whether it's out of the backfield or lined up on the line of scrimmage, has been an awesome element for this offense. He is slowly starting to emerge as the true joker for this Broncos offense. Right now, he's averaging 4.5 yards a carry. He has 2 rushing touchdowns, and he has 4 receiving touchdowns. Bo Nix continues to improve week by week. He currently sits with 17 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The major focus for Bo right now is going to be figuring out that deep ball. Once he hits that, and we've got 8 games to go for him to do that, you're going to see just a whole nother level of play from this team. And looking at the Raiders defense, it's coordinated by Patrick Graham. He's actually been the defensive coordinator since 2022. Before that, he was the assistant head coach and defensive coordinator for the New York Giants from 2020 to 2021. And prior to that, the defensive coordinator from Miami in 2019. Now, the Raiders defense currently sits at 19th in the league. They're allowing 333.4 yards a game, 224 passing, which is 21st in the league, 109.4 rushing, which is 16th, and 26.3 points per game, which is 23rd. Now, similar to the defense that the Broncos just saw on Sunday against the Texans, they're going to be facing another defense that is base 4-3, but likes to play a lot of 4-2-5 nickel coverage with a little bit of shell. Now, this defense, unlike the DeMeco Ryans defense, is more willing to blitz than play straight up. They also aren't afraid to use a single high safety in coverage. So with that, they'll use a little bit more cover 1 or cover 3. This defense absolutely prides itself on stopping the run, though it's been with varied success this year. When it comes to defending the pass, they do like to use a lot of zone. So far this year, on 87.4% of the time, they're using some sort of zone coverage to defend the pass on clear passing downs. Even though they're willing to blitz and bring a lot more guys to create pressure, they haven't really been successful at it this year. They're blitzing about 40% of the time on dropbacks, and when they do, only about 29.4% of the time are they actually creating pressure. Now, with that being said, they still have a force in that backfield with defensive end Max Crosby. He's still a terror and a game wrecker. He currently has 5 sacks, 10 plus tackles for loss, 5+ passes defense. He leads the Raiders when it comes to pressures. Max Crosby is always a force every time we face him. When we talk about their coverage abilities, this is absolutely a tough area for the Raiders right now. I would expect that Sean Payton and the offense are going to test this. Their cornerback, Caillou Blue Kelly, is allowing the second most completions in the NFL right now. There's also another familiar face back there in Jamal Adams, who was a safety for Pete Carroll in Seattle, but has been converted in this offseason to being an outside linebacker. He can be a force and he can be a disruptor as well. The Broncos will need to be prepared to contain him. So what's the plan for all 11 on offense for the Broncos? Work the middle of the field. I continue to push for Evan Ingram getting integrated into this game. I think he's a weapon that we just haven't figured out how to use much yet. And with the lack of coverage ability from the Raiders right now, I think this could be an Evan Ingram game. Use him on hitches, use him on curls, use him on seam routes, play him on some of the out routes as well. Attack that 0 to 9, 10 to 20 yard part of the defense for the Raiders. And I think Evan Ingram can be a key component of doing that. I also think that attacking the middle of the defensive line when it comes to running the ball will create some success as well. Looking at the special teams, the Raiders special teams is coordinated by Tom McMahon. He's actually been the special teams coordinator since 2022. Prior to that, he's actually a familiar face for the Broncos. He was the special teams coordinator for the Broncos from 2018 to 2021. They do have a dynamic kick returner back there in Raheem Mostert. The Broncos are very familiar with him from a game that shall not be named where the Broncos were drubbed in Miami, and Raheem Mostert was a key contributor of that. That is somebody that the special teams unit will absolutely need to be prepared to contain. Let's take a look at the health reports for both teams, starting with the Raiders. Now, the Raiders finally get their first round tight end back in Brock Bowers last week, and he went on a tear, letting the world know that he was back. He's on the injury report for his toe injury, but he's practicing fully and obviously will be playing in this game. Along with some other starters to keep an eye on, Isaiah Polamalu and Adam Butler are both practicing and look like they're on track to play. In terms of the Broncos health report, as expected, Pat Surtain and Nate Adkins are out, although there are reports that they are practicing on the side field for the Broncos, so that's good to hear. An encouraging note, Marvin Mims was back on the practice field after a concussion and being out last week. We absolutely need him when it comes to our special teams. He was practicing limited. There are a few other notable Broncos that came up on the health report. Riley Moss, Jonathan Cooper, DJ Jones, safety Brandon Jones were all practicing. Will Lutz also popped up on the practice report with an illness. In terms of transactions for the Broncos, they ultimately end up releasing JT Gray with an injury designation. Unfortunately, in his first game for the Broncos, he ended up hurting his hamstring, and it looks like he will no longer be with the Broncos. Wish JT Gray the best. I didn't mention this at the top, but I do want to talk a moment about the trade deadline. I know for Broncos country and for fans across the NFL, this is one of those things that gets a lot of hype when we talk about just the whole NFL annual cycle here. And there's this thought that teams that trade for players are all in, and teams that don't trade for players or sell aren't all in. I couldn't disagree with that more. Sometimes there's opportunities to add somebody that can be a difference maker for the team. Sometimes you're happy with the roster that you have, and that can be the reason why you don't ultimately end up making a splash during the trade deadline. And thinking about what our team's philosophy when it comes to building a roster is. And our organization has absolutely communicated that they want to win now and in the future. That means that draft picks are essential when it comes to building a roster for the long term. If we do look at acquiring a player and giving away one of our draft picks, they have to make an immediate impact now, be a positive impact in the locker room now, and then they also have to have the ability to make an impact for us going forward, because that's how important a draft pick is. Now, don't get me wrong. I acknowledge it's incredibly fun to see your team be in the mix, to be in the cycle, all of these wonderful big names to be a part of your team. I trust our owners, the GM, our head coach to make the decisions that are going to help this team win now and going forward. I want the Broncos to go on a dynasty run here, and they seem to be on that track. They've got a lot of young, impressive talent. They've got just the right mix of veterans, and they clearly have a locker room that plays for each other. That can't be measured, but often is the difference between a team winning the Super Bowl and a team that has a lot of flash and does some great things in the regular season, but completely fizzles out when it comes playoff time. This team ain't gonna be like that. What are your thoughts on the trade deadline? Was there somebody that you had your eye on that you were hoping our Broncos would acquire? What do you think are the keys to the Broncos beating the Raiders on Thursday Night Football? Let me know in the comments. As always, be kind. Talk to you soon, Broncos country.